Welcome to today's webinar, What Will It Take to Solve Food Waste? A special conversation with Andrew Zimmern. Today's event is part of ReFed's celebration of 10 years since the release of the roadmap to reduce the U.S. food waste. And we are so grateful to have the opportunity to share the virtual screen with Andrew today. You guys are all in for a real treat. My name is Dana Gunders. I'm the president of ReFed. I'm excited to be your host and moderator today. And before we bring Andrew on screen, I did want to just share a few quick ReFed announcements. For those of you not familiar with ReFed, we are a US-based nonprofit that partners with food businesses, funders, solution providers, policymakers, more to help solve food waste. It's a problem that costs all of us a lot of money and has an an enormous negative impact on our planet and communities. Our goal is to increase the adoption of food waste solutions. And one way that we help do that is through events and webinars like this, which can help inform the work that you all are doing out there. Also, in a little more than 2 weeks, on April 7th, ReFed will be publishing Progress on the Plate, which is the 2026 U.S. Food Waste Report. This is ReFed's flagship annual publication that features the latest data on the progress, trends, and remaining challenges in reducing food waste in the U.S. Be the first to know when it's published by signing up for our mailing list, and we'll put a link to that in the chat. Last year, ReFed relaunched its Food Waste Action Network, a member-driven community for practitioners in the food waste space. By bringing together a wide range of individuals and helping them connect with others working in similar spaces, as well as their immediate area, the network creates a way for users to identify needs, share what they have to offer others, and team up to make progress on their food waste reduction goals. You can learn more and find a link to sign up for that in the chat as well, or you can scan the QR code that's up on the screen right now. Also, on May 19th to 21st, we will be bringing our ReFed Food Waste Solution Summit to Charlotte, North Carolina. It's the premier food waste event of the year, brings together hundreds of thought leaders, decision makers, advocates, and more for 3 days of insights, inspiration, and action. You'll leave with actionable takeaways that can drive progress in your work. And today is the last day to purchase tickets at our special early bird discounted rate. In 2025, last year, the summit sold out, and we're anticipating the same for this year. So head over to our summit site and grab your tickets. All right. Those were our announcements. We got them out of the way, and now I am so pleased to be joined by the Emmy and multiple James Beard award-winning television host, chef, and food advocate, Andrew Zimmern. Andrew is known for shows like Bizarre Foods, The Zimmern List, What's Eating America, Family Dinner, and Wild Game Kitchen. He's authored 5 books, including his most recent, The Blue Food Cookbook, which we will hear more about today. It was released last October as a follow-up to the Emmy and James Beard nominated documentary series that he was a part of called Hope in the Water. Andrew also leverages his platform to fight hunger and promote sustainability as the Global Goodwill Ambassador for the UN World Food Program and the Nature Conservancy. Not to mention, he's on a host of other boards, etc. So let's have a virtual round of applause to welcome Andrew. All right, Andrew, here we are. I'm so thrilled to have you. Thank you for taking the time to be here. And as I'm sure that you have heard, ReFed recently celebrated 10 years since the publishing of our groundbreaking report, which we were really founded on, which was called the Roadmap to Reduce U.S. Food Waste. And, we are spending a lot of time just reflecting back on what's happened in those 10 years and what's changed. So I would love to kick us off by asking you, what would you say are the biggest changes that you've observed in the food world since a decade ago?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I wish we had issued the the report that's coming out in a couple days, and then allowed me to attend the May festival before having this chat, because I would sound more informed and I'd have a lot of really up to the minute data. You flattered me very much with that very kind introduction, so thank you. And I just wanted to say welcome to whoever's listening in, and watching. Um, it's really an honor to talk to like-minded people, because I assume, and I know that's a bad word, but I assume we are all like-minded people who want to make change in the world and understand that food waste is one of the big places that we can do that. Um, you know, the good and bad. I mean, you guys, Dana, know best of all, because you set out a list of um, things that needed to change, things that should change, things that would be nice to change. Um, and we know by the data that we have some slow incremental progress, on so many fronts. Um, then we've seen, this isn't a red or blue issue or left or right. This is just factual. We've seen so much oversight and so much help and progress being made over the years, sort of ripped away over the last 12 plus months. That it's that part's a little discouraging to me. I also think, like other existential issues that we all share as human beings, um, for whatever reason, and behavioral scientists can argue about this. I'm not a behavioral scientist. We're not taking this seriously enough. Um, Anyone in any dining room anywhere in America, because they've heard it 1,000 times, has heard a version of the sentence that goes something like this. Um, we have a lot of hungry people in America, and we waste so much food. If we could just hang on to that, we'd be able to feed everybody. And while technically there are aspects of that that's true, it's not a 1 plus 1 equals 2 solution.
Definitely not.
Number two, everybody assumes somebody else is doing it. And number three, uh, people, once you believe one and two, seem to lack the urgency to understand that we have to solve this quickly. And I think probably the biggest disappointment is, it was roughly around 10 years ago that I made my first um, public statement of need for a cabinet level secretary of food.
Mm.
And it is something that I talk about constantly. But until we have an understanding of how much food plays a central role in everyone's life, um, aside from the obvious, right? We have to eat to live. Um, Although I guess technically we could drink nutrients in a can. A lot of things with our
Yeah.
bodies would change, but I guess technically we could. Um, but we have to eat to live, and we need to put food under a decision-making governmental authority, so that the decisions made in one area of government as it relates to food are in lockstep with decisions made in another area of government, so that we can achieve some very simple goals that have somehow managed to elude us. And my biggest example of that, and then I'll shut up, is regulations from state to state about food rescue. It's
Yeah.
different everywhere. So if you've solved the problem in Massachusetts, like my friends at Love and Spoonfuls have, or Spoonfuls, sorry, they changed their name, um, you can't export that wisdom. And you know, the if we had a secretary of food, that would be an easy lift. Um, so yeah, I see some incremental positive change, and everyone's going to sit there and say, well, now we have we collect more waste and refuse, and we're able to recycle more, and we're able to do this, and we're able to do that. But quite frankly, we're basically at the same waste and the same hunger numbers that we were a decade ago. It's just shifted. We've just shifted piles around, and
Yep.
that really pisses me off.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's so complicated. I know as we've been working on the Food Date Labeling Act, trying to reform the date labels on food,
There you yep.
you have the USDA that's in charge of one set of foods and FDA that's in charge of another, and therefore there are different committees in the House and the Senate that have to approve anything to do with the date labels, and it's very convoluted. And to be honest, there's no real opposition right now, but just the procedural stuff and getting past that is the hurdle for us right now. So yeah, it's very piecemeal, right?
Yep. And as you brought up something that's near and dear to my heart, once you solve one problem, you're faced with another, right? So, education is such an important piece of this, and the rules change all the time. During the 60s, when I was growing up, Dannon yogurt, it was the only brand in super, that and Breakstone had some sort of weird yogurt, but Dannon was like a really big new thing. And they had three flavors, and my parents bought them all, and they came in waxed cardboard single serving containers, and it had one of those like 1960s cardboard lids that had a little I don't even know what you call a little tongue that sat perpendicular to it, so you could grab that and pull it off. There was no plastic, there was no nothing. There was an understanding that yogurt was a living thing, and
Mhm.
quite frankly, it had already spoiled, and now it's in the refrigerator, and you should just use it within a reasonable amount of time. And if you open up the lid and you see a spider web of different colored mold there, it's probably a good idea to throw it away. Maybe someone took a bite with a dirty spoon, and but we had yogurt that would sit there for months at a time and then get eaten because nobody liked the coffee flavor but me. And I have the same issue with food in my house where something is 2 months past its best by date, or whatever date is now on that thing. And as someone who's been in food for a long time, I open whatever it is, whether it's celery, smoked fish, it doesn't, bread, whatever. And you look at it and you figure out what you're going to do to process it in the hopes that you don't have to throw it away if it's past its peak. It's very confusing. It takes a lot of education as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Maybe that's where you got your start in eating bizarre foods, was the funky old coffee yogurt. But I'd love to ask you about that. One of the things you're known for is a kind of a former chapter, I think, of your life where you did a whole set of shows around bizarre foods that you ate that people can eat in different cultures around the world. And I'm curious, kind of looking at taking that and looking at the US, like where do you see the opportunity for us to encourage like that has true potential in our culture for us to encourage people to eat like certain parts of food or different foods that are not really like culturally acceptable now.
Well, I mean, we can argue about this till the cows come home, but I'm still involved in restaurants. I've never stopped being involved in restaurants. This is my 50th year in restaurants. Um, technically, I'm in my 51st, but I got my first job in a restaurant in 1970, summer of 1975. So, and I've never stopped taking a paycheck in restaurants since. Um, and so I understand, I think, the American consumer pretty well. Um, and I think the responsibility lies with the people carrying the message about what is and isn't okay to eat. Um, One of my favorite behavioral scientists is Dr. Sweta Chakraborty. And I met her at South by Southwest. We were on a panel several years ago on a similar subject to this. And she reminded me that the greatest determinant of change in human behavior is the belief in the honesty of the person delivering the message. Um, that has become incredibly complicated these days, especially in the world of AI, where we are now questioning almost everything we see, almost every data point. We're wondering what people's motivations are. Is it money? Is it applause? Is it more budget from another entity? Is it fundraising time of year? I mean, we have we are treating information, especially scientific information, in 2026 with with a reaction set that I feel like I'm back in the Middle Ages and I'm Galileo trying to explain to people that the sun is the center of our solar system. I mean, it's mind boggling to me. The fact of the matter is that food is different everywhere, and what we choose to eat in large part has to deal with how we're socialized. And I'll give you the biggest throwaway, uh, uh, factoid. Americans still don't like being served a fish with the head on it.
Right.
We're the only country in the world that doesn't seem to understand that, whether it's the head of a shrimp, whether it's the head of a flounder, a trout, a small bass, a 2 pound red snapper, um, that's not the best eating on the whole animal. Um, and it's beyond my ability to understand why we insist on processing so much of our food. And I'll stick with the fish on your plate to begin with. You know, we're the only country in the world where a, a 2 pound red snapper, pristine, out of the water, super fresh, delicious, um, can't just be scaled, seasoned, a few slits put into the fillets so that they cook evenly with the thinner meat down by the tail, and thrown in a steamer, the grill, a saute pan, wherever it could be, and then served. Right. Um, that is an exercise that happens in every single country on planet Earth except ours,
Mm.
right? And you can talk to all kinds of chefs and restaurateurs, and there's every once in a while an odd exception, but in the 99.9% of the time we have to process food in order to make it palatable to us. Now, I understand that filleting fish doesn't sound like processing to many people, but it is processing, and it puts days onto what I hope is a well-preserved cold chain, right? Because that fish then has to stay in a different bin. That fish can't go directly uh, from uh, from dock to wholesaler to retail fish store or restaurant to customer. It has to go to a separate place. It has to be filleted. It has to be dried and cleaned and come off the line. I mean, it just adds layers of complexity to it. And every minute and every human hand that touches it makes it more expensive.
Mm.
Um, it is a a a social uh, behavioral issue that we don't like that, right? We don't want heads on our fish. By the same token, some of the most delicious meat in the world is found on the necks of animals. We won't eat that. Um, we won't eat goat here in America, despite it's quick to raise. It can be humanely dispatched as anything else. It's a small size. It can be raised almost anywhere. Um, I'm talking about 49 out of 50 states. I just haven't. I mean, it could be raised indoors in Alaska. I'm assuming winter up in central Alaska, where I've spent a lot of time when it's 40 below, maybe not great for goats. But maybe. But my point is, they can be regionally farmed and distributed with tremendous ease. Um, I was cooking rabbit for a segment of Wild Game Kitchen we were taping yesterday, and I made a rabbit dish, and then I showed you what you showed the audience what they could do with the leftovers. I'm really big now on Wild Game Kitchen of doing a dish and then showing you what to do with what's left behind, um,
I
which I
love
think
that.
is a whole separate conversation. But what's staggering to me is how many people on my crew looked at me, tasted the first rabbit dish that I did, which was really simple, just roasted with thyme and lemon, and just sauced in its natural juices and charred carrots and charred leeks and a little bit of charred leek oil. And it was just a beautiful dish. Um, and then we made rabbit pot pie. I don't want to confuse people and see 100 questions in the chat. What was your leftover? We made rabbit pot pie with it, which was fabulous. But
Wow.
everybody said to me, "Where'd you get your rabbit?" And we got it from a farm here in Minnesota, run by some friends of mine. Rabbit is still expensive, despite the fact that it's extremely easy to raise, quick to reach harvest age. Um, is a lean, healthy protein. Um, but we just have an issue with rabbits and donkeys and fish heads in this country. So we can't even get to the conversation of some of the more extreme things that I ate in bizarre foods. Another word about the maybe something that isn't all the way at the other extreme, but maybe somewhat in the middle, which is whole animal utilization. Um, we really are the only country in the world, truly, um, that says we practice whole animal utilization, but doesn't practice whole animal utilization. Um, and I'm not trying to be gross, but um, you know the the entire nation of Finland um, handles animals that they harvest, their blood, as an entirely separate ingredient. It's even utilized in certain dishes in their school system. And that's not necessarily because the kids all grew up on it. I mean, there's two full generations of Finns that live in Helsinki, a modern Western city. They're not living on a farm and grandpa's making, pig's blood pancakes. But they incorporate it into the diets in the school system so that they are not wasting food. Um, so even something as simple as buying whole fish in the fish store or supermarket, wherever you may buy your fish, just in terms of buying whole fish, keeping the head and the bones and the tail to make stock and soup from, and to at least get all of the nutritional benefits of it, to save on the cost of it, just seems to be something that Americans are just incrementally willing to dip their toe into the bathtub of, but not enough to effecate change. And
Mm.
that, again, it's frustrating. It's why I try to do so much of it in my TV work, because I understand that there are people out there who trust me when I say, buy a whole red snapper, have them fillet it for you. They'll graciously do that because you're buying a whole fish, and have them give you the bones and head. And here's how to make something with the bones and the head. And here's what you can do on night one with those fillets. And then your all of that luscious broth that you make with so much great meat from the neck and shoulders of the fish, and little pieces of meat that flake off the bones, can then be utilized to make incredible soups and stews and chowders. I try to do it at every turn. Americans are not going to eat bugs, not in your lifetime, not in my lifetime.
No, I'm still holding out hope for the cricket bars, the ground up cricket bars, but I guess
You
we'll
know,
see.
here's the problem, and I've spent the last 20 years of my life getting head ass and overcoat into this. Uh, we can't get those businesses to scale and get the price down fast enough. We may be able to do it over the next 30 years, but we have 5 years in which to do this. It's
Yeah.
the greatest outrage in the world to me when it comes to feeding a hungry planet and how we feed uh, a hungry planet dovetails with how we waste less in a hungry planet. So I don't think I'm changing the subject here, but it's the outrage that I feel when I see billionaires uh, investing tens of millions of dollars in cell-based meats,
Mm,
something that will not scale quickly enough to feed us, with, costs a fortune, right? I mean, it's why there's none for, believe me, if it was scalable and saleable, it would be in markets yesterday, right?
hmm.
Um, and we refuse to invest in things that we know would work. They aren't the home run when it comes to investment, but they're a solid double, right? Things like aquaculture, things like goat farms, other forms of farming where we have gray water used to raise vegetables and to raise fish and shrimp and do all of it in one system, and starting to do things like diversify our diet here in America to include game birds and something other than the three big celebrity fish. We have to radically change multiple behaviors in this country if we want to make a dent in the waste problem, in the hunger problem, in the climate crisis problem. It is not a one solution solves every issue kind of thing,
Right.
as that dinner conversation goes, where people say, well, if we just took some of the food we wasted and gave it to the people who were hungry, we'd solve
Right.
two problems at one. That's a canard. And we have 13, 14 different pillars that I've isolated that require change. And I'm hoping in May we'll get a chance to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, good. Would love to. And I think, I mean, your recent book on blue foods, right? It's sort of a start at that, getting people to think a little bit more broadly about the diversity of that. So maybe could you tell everyone a little bit about what people may not be familiar with that term? So what are blue foods? Why did you focus on that as, and how does it fit? How does that fit into the waste picture as well?
Oh gosh, let me go in reverse order. It's a great question. Well, let me set it up and go in reverse order. I've been obsessed with foods from the ocean, lakes, rivers, streams, and ponds since I was a little kid. I went crabbing with my father, clamming with my father. We gathered mussels on the beach. We threw out a line and surf cast at 5 o'clock as the tide was coming in, and we ate dinner on the beach most nights that we could. Um, we used to watch people take longboats out of the dunes and push them out into the ocean and gather the nets at night that they had set that morning, and then set nets that they would gather up the next day at dawn. Um, we watched this natural rhythm of life exist for as long as it existed until it couldn't exist anymore, which was about the early 70s. But I became so entranced in the what is now the blue food movement. um, I now run all over the world on behalf of the UN and the Nature Conservancy and the International Rescue Committee and other big global NGOs that I work with, doing pilot programs for kids that have to do with how they feed themselves and how to eliminate waste. And I find that seafood is a blue foods is a must for rejiggering our food system, because the green foods world, terrestrial agriculture, is dying. It's dying here in America for a lot of reasons: workforce, climate crisis, cost. Our farm to freighter economy is booming. So if we have 10,000 acres and we're growing cotton in Texas, we can do that with 5 or 6 people, giant combines. I mean, like bigger than houses. And we can get that cotton down into the port of Corpus Christi and out on a boat uh, very efficiently and make a lot of money doing it. But what the USDA has classified as specialty foods, foods fit for human consumption, uh, those farmers don't get those same benefits with their workforce, with equipment, with crop insurance, none of that. And so to me, it's like, do I want to have this fight, or do I want to pivot and start to get people excited about a whole other world of food? And I determined about 14 years ago that it would be easier to get people, because I'm a capitalist, and capitalism seems to be driving a lot of decisions, almost all decisions these days. So I said, let's start talking about blue foods as an investment opportunity, as a rescue opportunity, right? As entire continents like Africa's land contains less and less energy in it to grow plants, right? It's just a fact.
Mhm.
So I really got involved in a lot of seafood movements, and I believe it is the solution to how we feed a hungry planet and how we cut down on waste. Um, the Looking at blue foods is one of the clearest examples of why food waste matters. I mean, roughly a third of all the food produced globally is lost or wasted each year. In the United States alone, I think it's about 28, 29% of food goes unsold or uneaten, which represents, almost $400 billion in lost value, and over 115 billion missed meals. Um, Seafood, blue food, to me seems to illustrate the stakes a little bit better than other areas. If you look at blue foods, about 15% of fish and aquatic food globally is wasted. It's equal to about 24 million tons of edible nutrition each year. Um, in the United States, the latest studies that I saw estimate about 22% of seafood supply is lost or wasted across the supply chain. A lot, right? At the same time, seafood is easily the most nutrient dense and climate efficient protein we have. Nothing else comes close, right? Nothing else comes close. Seaweed, you just have to attach a spore to a rope, let it sit for 6 months, and haul it in. I mean, it requires nothing other than that. So, very little pressure on our environment, but it is highly perishable. It's often mishandled. And when we waste fish, we're not only wasting food, we're wasting the fuel that's burned by the vessels that have to go out and work the water, the labor of the fishers, cold chain infrastructure, the marine ecosystem that produced it, all of it.
Mhm.
So, all of that is to say, um, food waste is ocean waste. And if we treat seafood with the same circular mindset that has emerged in agriculture, um, which is good, we haven't activated on it yet, but there's great thinking on it. Um, then we'll start using the whole fish like we use the whole plant. We'll improve cold chains. We will redirect surplus, right, to those that need it the most. Um, will improve food security and reduce pressure on wild fisheries all at the same time. And I think that investing in blue food is something we desperately need to do more of, especially because so much of that investment can occur in right offshore with edibles that are lowest on the food chain. Seaweed,
Yeah.
clams, mussels, oysters, boxes to raise eels in. I mean, good
Mhm.
luck getting Americans to eat eel. Why does everybody love it in a sushi bar, but nobody wants to just buy an eel fillet and grill
It's
it?
the sauce. I think it's the sauce.
It is the sauce. It is the sauce. I think you're right.
My daughter, in her preschool, they actually served for their snack sardines with brown rice when she's going to be 11 soon, right? But when she was 3, she was served this, and she has been this sardine fan, which no one else in our family, we've had to sort of come around to it, to be honest, because but she like kind of really, so she came home asking us to buy sardines, and it's kind of been a part of our pantry ever since. But I'm curious, like within the blue food and seafood, is there a difference between blue food and seafood?
All seafood is blue food.
But it also includes like seaweed, that sort of thing. Okay. So in any case, I mean, one thing, and it's an area that I've tried to wrap my head around, the waste side of it for a while. There was a great report done by Johns Hopkins. It was like a 4-year study. And I would say what it found was it really depends on the fishery, how much is going to waste. But I think one conclusion they had was that frozen seafood is it leads to less waste. And I think that's true across the supply chain, certainly in the grocery store, and then I think in homes too. So I'm curious, that I think there's an attitude that fresh is better. So as a chef, I'm curious, when you go to a grocery store, you're not getting it from the back of somebody's boat. Go to the grocery store, is the fresh fish fresher? Or is the frozen okay? What is your chef's advice on that?
Well, I don't have anyone's boat to go to because I live in
She lives in
Minnesota.
Minnesota. Fair point.
Uh, so I go to supermarket, big box store, and seafood shop to do my seafood purchase, my blue food purchasing.
Hmm.
I go to all three. The Let me start with grocery stores and big box stores. Um, Frozen is your friend. Frozen is convenient. Frozen means cheaper. People people believe that fish, and in many cases they're right, that fish is more expensive than meat. I always have to remind them and set the table, so to speak. There's over 300,000 edible species of animals and plants in the ocean. We really only eat one species of chicken. We really, and don't get at me about all the subspecies, but we really only eat one species of cow, and we really only eat one species of lamb and very little of it. And commodity pork is essentially one species of pork. Um, and so, and nobody ever walks into their supermarket and says, "Excuse me, can you show me where the wild chicken is sold?" I mean, seafood is pronounced guilty before it's ever had a chance to prove its innocence. Um, Seafood is convenience food. Blue foods are convenience food. You can cook fish from frozen very, very easily. Very easily. Um, I happen to think shrimp cooked from frozen in liquid is better than shrimp that's defrosted and cooked, because the slower you cook a shrimp, the better. So if I can get my court bouillon or sauce, even if it's just butter that's going to have lemon in it, or if it's a liquid for making a gumbo before it has any animal in it of any kind, just vegetables and the roux thickened broth that's cooked down, and I just stick 20 frozen shrimp in there and put a lid on it and turn the heat off and come back 20 minutes later, they're all curled and hot and perfectly cooked. right? And they've done so really slowly. So they're not tough. They don't get fibrous, very little fat in a shrimp that, it's why butter poached lobster is so good, or butter poached shrimp, because we do it very slowly at low temp. So frozen anything is your friend. You can take frozen portions of salmon and put them on in a buttered baking dish and throw it in a 350-degree oven and come back 25 minutes later and you have delicious salmon. So it's set it and forget it with
Mm.
seafood. Tinned, even better. It's funny with the sardine movement in America. For some reason, once you get all the influencers and food writers and everyone all excited about a 200-year-old process, I get excited because I'm like, oh, people are listening. Um, you know, Shitty fish is shitty fish. Can't rescue it. Shitty bread is shitty bread. Uh, Sorry, I'm a New Yorker. The My apologies. If it's low in quality to start, putting it in a can isn't going to magically save it. But if you have a good quality sardine and it's packed in good olive oil and it's just processed once, the problem that we have in America is that we process all of our fish twice. We cook it, pack it, and then put water or oil into the jar or the tin, and we heat it again to 8,000 degrees, which is why so many of those uh, fish that are processed that way and other types of seafood, it winds up being dry. You just can't save it. But when real tuna is packed into jars, or real sardines and real anchovies and real squid and razor clams and on and on and on, and it's packed in a sauce, an escabeche, or in its own ink, or in olive oil, or in water, and um, it is canned, tinned, it's just cooked once. And it's ethereal, especially when you do other things to it. I'm one of those people that could put it on a saltine with some hot sauce and be just fine. But I love making a sardine salad the same way I would make a tuna salad, with thinly sliced celery and a little bit of shallot and herbs. And I love making quick pates with smoked seafood. Two or three, little tins. I mean, for some reason they come really small, which irritates me. But I think it has to do with cost. They don't want sticker shock. But a little smoked fish of one kind, smoked mussels, smoked oysters, drain it, put it all in a blender with a little bit of butter and shallot and caper and lemon and herb, and gradually add some of that oil back in and put it into a little crock and put it in your fridge and come to it 5 hours later and spread it on toasted baguette. You have a smoked seafood pate that's just glorious, right?
That sounds
I
delicious.
love pan frying sardines out of a tin. Don't touch them for like 10 minutes on medium heat. You don't even need any oil in the pan. There's plenty adhering
Hmm.
to the sardine. It gets so hyper crispy, and then flip it, and then basically you're just warming it through for 20 seconds and serve a pile of them with lemon juice and you can use caper. Something else that's pickled is always nice on there, or just a little sherry wine vinegar and olive oil and toast. You'll freak out. They literally become shatteringly crisp on one side. I'm
Hmm.
Tin fish and frozen is where you find the best value. They are convenience foods. And by the way, bravo to the American supermarkets, the vast majority of which have all taken an oath, a loyalty oath, and they have very proud of the signage that hangs down that says, we only shop responsibly from uh, resources that play by the rules, and you can trust whatever's in our case. I'm
Yeah.
generalizing, but the idea is, when we ask fresh or frozen, wild or farm, we're actually asking the wrong questions at seafood counter. We need to be asking, was it responsibly resourced and how was it handled? And if where you're buying it can't tell you, don't buy it there. But even at Costco or Walmart, they'll tell you. They
Hmm.
really know. There's someone in that department who knows. And obviously, at the specialty shop, they know. And now increasingly, whether it's Albertsons, Kroger's, Hy-Vee, Lund's, I'm just HEB, so many regional and national supermarket groups have taken an oath because they know that the next generation of customers prioritizes uh, their environmental and food safety concerns more than any other generation in human history.
Yeah, for sure. While we're on that, I'm going to switch to an audience question, actually, while we're on the grocery stores, which is asking kind of where within the commercial retail setting do you think there's the biggest bang for buck or biggest opportunity, let's say, for food waste reduction? And that's not just
Oh,
fish, that's sort of like the whole store. Like, where do you think grocery stores are missing?
prepared foods,
Mm,
you know, and I'm not. I'm only calling them out because I went and did a food signing event at a very small micro chain in Texas called Central Market, and they have staff there 24 hours a day. They bake all their breads from scratch. They have about 200 choices in the fish counter. They have massive prepared food sections in every aisle in their market.
mm.
Everyone.
Wow. Wow.
Because they let the seafood team say, hey, we have a couple pounds of grouper and a couple pounds of snapper and a couple pounds of this left over. We're going to make fish chowder, or we're going to make, you know, uh, easy skillet fish bake and stick it in the freezer section in a container that all you have to do is let it sit out for an hour and just temper a little bit and then slide it into the 425-degree oven. And your fish and vegetables and potatoes are all there in one pan and they'll cook in 20 minutes, right? Um, I think the prepared foods this is why restaurants are the tip of the spear when it comes to this trend because we are constantly taking food and reinventing it,
The
right?
chef special, right? Isn't that?
It's well, it's you know, it's in a sense, it's even deeper than that. My I could eat mussels every day of the year. 90% of the mussels that I order are sat around for too long. They're dry, they've shrunken, they don't fill out the shell. It's
Mm,
really disappointing. But they're still alive and they're still good and they still have great flavor. And so I was working with the restaurant group last year, and showed them that you can steam two 20-pound bags of mussels, pick out all the meats so they're small and they've dried a little, but they're still good. You don't want to necessarily showcase them in a bowl of mussels steamed in white wine and just be showing someone, look how mediocre looking our mussels are.
mm,
But those little mussels could be put into a sauce with a fish or into a soup or a pasta sauce, right? But those mussels still give off so much liquid. You can come away with gallons and gallons of mussel broth, which, if you strain it, is so sweet and savory and is one of the great ingredients in the whole world. And you can make soups and sauces. You can reduce it and make a velouté from it and poach fish in it and then sauce it. I mean, it's mind boggling how many uses there are for that stuff. It's like have you read that children's book, The Parable of the Limp Carrot?
no,
Oh,
no,
it's
but
thrilling.
sounds like I should
Uh,
though.
it's all about someone in the house who opens up the vegetable. It was a joke, actually. I'm not getting a lot of laugh emojis. Look, people, I'm in television, which means I have a huge ego and no self-esteem at all. Thank you. I got some laugh emojis. But you open up the vegetable crisper and there's like a bag and you're like, oh, carrots, and you grab them and you forget you bought them like 3 months ago, and they're not moldy, they're not wet, they're not rotting, they're just really flaccid. Why not just briefly poach them and make that make a ginger carrot salad dressing that everyone seems to love in every Japanese restaurant that
Mhm.
I go to. I mean, that's what I do. That's when I make it, when I'm down to the last three carrots of the bag. Um, Everything else is a pantry item except for the shallot and the ginger, but I keep that around because I cook a lot with shallots and ginger. Um, yeah, reusing things
Yeah.
is saying that a supermarket is uniquely positioned too because of their licensing, right?
Yeah. Right.
So, and they have the space and they have the labor. Once I started, quizzing the people at Central Market, it's like they were like, it was really easy to go from being open from 6 in the morning till, an hour before opening to 9 at night, an hour after closing, and just be open 24 hours, albeit not open to the public, but to have people come in and be making everything from scratch. And we're saving money. They were differentiating themselves from their competitors. They were able to uh, tout their achievements. And that's rare in the grocery business. So I think that's probably the biggest opportunity is in prepared meals, sauces,
Prepared.
soups, and things like
And that
that.
reuse, yeah. I will say one of my personal home favorites in that regard is with rice because, you get any kind of takeout, you always have leftover rice. And I've come up with this homemade like risotto, like leftover rice risotto, where I just put some chicken broth in, some Parmesan cheese, and then like whatever else I want to put in, let it kind of cook for a little while and you're done. So,
It's delicious. What I do is, I'll even take it in a little white container, just drop it in the freezer. And then I can use it to make bisques and soups. Chicken broth with vegetables and little bits of pulled chicken from the bones is just missing rice to sort of, be that sort of, uh,
right.
a beautiful sort of childhood throwback meal. And I do a lot of things like you do with the rice to make a one pot skillet dinner. Um, I'm not a big fan of Hamburger Helper as it exists on the shelf today. It has a lot of things that are not natural, not found in nature in it. However, I make skillet meals. I call them one bowl meals all the time, where vegetables, carbs, protein, so everything is in one bowl. And a lot of that has to do with rice. I love reusing rice.
Yeah. Um, it's I think it's just one of those things that everyone has. It's like pervasive out there, the extra rice. Um, all right. Well, I have a couple, let's see, a couple, we'll do one more audience question here. Which is around food rescue. So you mentioned Lovin' Spoonfuls or now Spoonfuls in Boston, which is an incredible organization. They do a great job
Yep.
rescuing food, but we do often get a lot of people who from that world on our calls here on our webinars and just curious, what as a restaurateur, what is your recommendation about how food rescue groups can really like be strategic and how they partner with restaurants, like try to establish those relationships in the first place?
They need to go in there and sit down with chefs. And I would start with the best chefs in your city or town.
Mm,
Everybody always looks at the lead dog pulling the sled. And I think that's where the conversation starts.
yeah,
And so that's number one. The the bigger issue though is that, and this is why laws are so important, right? Without without the strength of laws, everything is a suggestion. And that's why my desire to have a national a food secretary uh you know is so important, because to mandate that restaurants hold food that would otherwise go to waste, right? And to give them no interest loans to purchase the equipment to do so, right?
yep, yep,
So that you backstop restaurants who are always having to reach in their pocket. But let's give them, let's give them no interest loans. Let's require them to keep hot food hot and cold food cold so that the food can be rescued.
Yeah.
And let us establish national regulations from state to state. So what has proven to work in, I think Spoonfuls is in southern Vermont. They're all the way out into western Massachusetts at this point. They've grown immensely. But let's understand that we have to take the wisdom from the people who have done a great job with this and spread that wisdom nationally. And it is, I think, incumbent, if the federal government cannot do it, let's at least have municipalities and state governments get together so within the borders of a state, we can feed those who need it the most. And there are so many ways in which to do that. But until it's a part of state or federal law, we are simply not going to see it happen. Um, you know, I'll throw this out because while it is tied to waste. It would cost us about 17-18 billion dollars a year to statistically eliminate childhood hunger in America. Rosa DeLauro, who was the head of the House Appropriations Committee, and I worked on this project in the run up to the Biden administration's Food, Health, and Nutrition Summit 3.5 years ago, I think it was. Um,
Right.
and I mean, she's an inspiring woman, but she actually had a very specific number. And I learned from her that's point at the time, 0.0027% of our federal government budget. That is a rounding error. I mean, that's a tiny rounding error. So, and this again, it's not red or blue or left or right. Every president since World War II has faced the same issue. When are we going to prioritize fixing things like hunger and waste and balance our food budget, as it were,
Right.
once and for all with laws and systems in place that allow everybody to eat? I don't understand how a politician can look me in the eye, elected or running for office, holding office, about to retire, it does not matter, and say that they are against feeding children. But that's exactly what they're saying by deprioritizing this issue. And with food waste, it's the exact same thing. So much of our food waste, in fact, I believe it's the majority still, I'll find out in 2 days, won't I, Dana, is pre-consumer contact, right? So we have to do a better job on the way to the retailer in our food system as well, right? This is not just incumbent upon the stores. It's not just incumbent upon the consumers. It's incumbent upon the food companies. And unless we have the power of laws, there will be non-compliance with it. So I think it's really important that we continue to lobby and lobby really, really hard for what we know to be something that will, for once and for all, balance the food budget, small b, not actual money budget, but make our waste
Yeah,
and hunger
make
issues
it.
balance out in America.
Well, I love that. And I think that is a great place for us to stop here. As you guys can see, Andrew is so passionate and an incredible spokesperson and advocate, as well as all of the chef stuff he does. So I
I'm
love
not
it. And
passionate. I'm just angry.
two sides of the same coin. I hope you all will join us for the summit where we are going to have a great conversation with Andrew there in May. Um, and that's not the right slide. That's up necessarily. That's today's slide. But we will be having another
I look
conversation in
good
May.
though. I
Good
look
shot.
good.
Good shot. And hope you enjoyed today. I know I did. I'm gonna go make a smoked tinned fish pate for an appetizer for tomorrow. And try some of the other tricks out. And just really appreciate all your time and thoughts. And I know there's so many great comments in the chat. We will share those with Andrew. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them and all the questions, but thank you all for being here.
I'll make a promise to everybody who's listening. If you put I mean, a lot of the questions are going to be duplicative. So just if you don't see yours particular answer, it means there's a similar one. But if the folks at Refed pass the questions on to me, I'll put them up on my Substack, and people can check it out there. It's called Spilled Milk, but it's a great place for this conversation to keep living.
Perfect. We will definitely get those to you then. Thank you so much, Andrew, and have a great day, and have a great day, everyone.